everyone. My name is Adam Lively, and I am a director of photography, and a filmmaking professor at Fanshawe College. Thank you for joining us today for the fourth seminar in our Youth Filmmaking 101 series for this season. We're excited to bring you what will be an educational session on a career in post-production. As this seminar is live, we encourage students, educators, and anyone else watching this to ask questions throughout the presentation by using the chat. We will have time at the end for a discussion to pose some of your questions to our guest, so keep them coming. I want to introduce you to Mason Klein. He was a finalist at the 2021 Forest City Youth Film Festival with his narrative film, The Angel in the Alleyway. He's currently a student at Sir Frederick Banting in London, Ontario. Mason, hi. I believe we're going to watch a clip from Mason's film. Congratulations, Mason. That's I was part of the jury for that and thoroughly enjoyed your film.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
What were some of the challenges in making the Angel in the Alleyway?
Well, other than it being my first real short film that I've ever made, I think the main challenge would be from going from the pen and paper to actually creating the film. Because when you're writing and you're coming up with the idea, there's no budget, there's no restriction, it's just simply you writing ideas down. But then executing that onto making it actual on a camera, getting the budget, getting all your friends, making sure their schedules match up, that was definitely the hardest part. And I think learning to edit, because I've never done that before, and that was just very difficult.
It is a big undertaking, isn't it? How many days did it take to film that?
To film it, I'd say it took about a month. It mainly took so long just because everyone was busy on different days, and we just had to find a time that worked for everyone. So a lot of it was shot really early in the morning.
Yeah, conflicting schedules, and so did you do everything? You wrote it, you shot it, you cut it?
Yes, I wrote it, shot it, directed it, edited it. Yeah, pretty much everything. Got the actors myself, who are just my friends, and yeah.
Amazing. Where did your interest in filmmaking come from? And is this something that you want to pursue?
Yes, it is something that I want to pursue. My interest in filmmaking came from, well, as a kid, I was just used to tell a lot of stories. Sometimes I just lie and make up random stories that never happened, and I don't know, that just kind of led to me, when you're older, you're like, wow, this could be a career, making up stories. And I've always loved watching movies. Wes Anderson's a big inspiration of mine. First watched Moonrise Kingdom, I think when I was around 12 or 13 years old, and then that just really, it changed me, and I was like, I should really try and make movies as a living, and that's where it came from.
Amazing. Is there a specific part of filmmaking that appeals to you? Do you enjoy the writing more, or the shooting, or the editing, or the whole?
Yeah, so I'd say the writing interests me the most, just because I love coming up with stories, new ideas. I have a whole bunch of ideas in this little notebook that I keep, but I don't know, a lot of them probably won't get made for a long time. I love to write, And then, so yeah, it'd definitely be the writing and the directing aspect that interests me the most.
That's amazing. And you said a couple minutes ago that you had to learn editing. You had to learn how to edit for your film.
Yes, that was very difficult. So me and my friend Andy, who's actually the main character in the movie, we after we finished all the shots and all that, we downloaded the free version of Adobe Premiere Pro with a little student promo code or something like that.
Yeah.
And I think we were in there from like 10 a.m. to like 11 p.m. just trying to teach ourselves it and just trying to figure it out. And it took us around, I'd say, well, we had what we thought was done in 2 days, but then there was a lot wrong with it. And so we had to go back and keep doing that. And yeah, it was a long, difficult process, but yeah, taught ourselves it in, I think, around 2 days-ish.
Oh, that's interesting. I know that when we're working with students at Fanshawe, whether they're in first year, second year, or in the post-grad program, we go through a sort of a rough cut one stage, a rough cut two, a fine cut, and then a picture lock. Sort of just like in the industry, you're constantly sending it off to whoever you've made the film for and getting their feedback, and you see these films take shape. It's really interesting to see how it goes from this to something finished in the end. Did you go through
originally? Oh, sorry. Yeah. What were you gonna say?
Sorry. Did you go through a similar thing? Were you screening it for your friends and family and getting their feedback?
Yeah. So originally it was around, I think, 8 minutes and 40 seconds, but that was just way too long, and that was with cuts. We cut out like a whole bunch of scenes, so it would probably be around like 9 to 10 minutes, and then we cut it down to, I think, 6:30, or maybe a little shorter than that. And so we had a whole bunch of different shots, and then we just kept taking different things out, and we just compacted it to like the key points that we wanted to get across with the shots that we used. And that was pretty much it. It was mainly just us saying, do we need this? Is this useful? And then just keep shortening it and making it look better. And that's what got the end product.
That is a tough thing to convince directors of or filmmakers of, is like, do you really need that? And that's the process.
Yeah.
That's the process of editing. Before we introduce,
there's a lot of
yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. Before we introduce our guest, what was it like to finally screen your film at the film festival? How did that feel?
Nerve-wracking. I don't know. It was kind of like putting myself out there, which I don't do too much of, and it was very, very nerve-wracking, very scary. But I'm glad it happened. I'm glad it happened for sure.
That nervous, scary feeling never goes away, I'll tell you. But exciting, right?
It was definitely exciting. Yes.
Yeah, great. Well, today's discussion is about careers in post-production, and I'm going to introduce you to a colleague and friend of mine, Jeremy Hardy. So Jeremy Hardy is an editor and producer. He's known for his television work on the show Mr. D, Trailer Park Boys animation series, the feature film Black Cop. He's also the founder and owner of DigiBoys, which is a post-production company in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia. In 2019, Jeremy was welcomed into the CCE, which is the Canadian Content Editors Association.
Cinema.
Oh, sorry. Correct me, Jeremy.
Canadian Cinema Editors.
That's what it says here. Anyhow, so welcome, Jeremy. I believe we're going to watch a clip.
Come on, the rest of you. We're missing recess. It's half over by now.
Can you tie my shoes?
Tie your own shoes. You're 7 years old.
I don't know how to, obviously.
It's not rocket science. Just copy one of those kids and do what they do.
Just do your job and tie my shoes.
Okay, we don't talk to teachers like that, okay? So, I'm gonna tie it this time. You tell your parents that you're gonna have slip-ons next time, right? Because I got better things to do. I have a Bachelor of Education, and this is not how I plan on using it. I double knotted those. Go. Hurry up. The rest of you, can we hurry up, please? What's the delay here?
Sir, Sonia won't let me use the blue marker.
For what? We're not using the blue marker, okay? It's recess. We're gonna go outside.
I want to draw outside.
Draw what? We're not drawing outside. We're running around, and we're getting exercise, and we're giving me a little break, okay?
He says you have to share the blue marker.
I didn't... Oh my gosh. Okay, back. We're back. We haven't left. Hurry up, everybody. Hurry up. What?
I need to switch back to my indoor shoes. Can you untie these, please?
You don't know how to untie your shoes either?
You were the one who put the double knots in them, genius, not me.
Just wear your outdoor shoes.
So lazy.
Why am I here? Why am I being punished?
Welcome, Jeremy.
Hi. Just before we get started, I did not cut that scene, but I did work on Mr. D for 4 years. So there was two other editors, 3 in total, and it was a team effort. We did watch each other's cuts and stuff.
Great. Let's start by how did you get into the industry, and why did post-production appeal to you over being on set or in production?
Well, in high school, I took an entrepreneurship course, and they encouraged me to go work out in the industries that we were interested in. And originally, I was interested in radio, so I went to a radio station, and then they told me of a program in the same town that was radio and television broadcasting. So I applied, got in the next year, and I was in that program, and I discovered really quickly that I hated radio and I wanted to be in television. And then I just seemed to excel in the technical side, and the editorial stuff just came to me when we were doing tape to tape. And we even rebuilt a computer system that they had, which was, I think, Lightworks, which was an editing system built on an Amiga. And that's where I got into it. And luckily enough, in my second year, I was doing a work term in Halifax for a company, a post-production company called Coronet Digital. And that's how I got my career start. They hired me 3 months before graduation. They actually asked my teacher if he'd let me out of school early and let me work full time. So I got pretty blessed.
That's a funny story, and that's actually where you and I first met. When I left film school, and I moved to Halifax, and then you and I were working on a telethon, the IWK telethon, and you were my supervisor. And 21, 22 years later, we've worked on a lot of projects together. Tell us a little bit more about your career, and then I'll let Mason ask some of the questions that he has.
Okay. Well, I was an assistant editor when I was brought on at Coronet, and I was in charge of maintaining all the computers and the tape decks and stuff like that. And at some point, the senior editor, he wasn't really available to work on this project that was coming in, and that was with Mike Clattenburg, the creator of Trailer Park Boys. And he had a black and white feature film that he wanted to have in the film festival within a few months. So the turnaround was pretty tight. There was no budget. And the editor, Mike O'Toole was his name, he said, look, I don't have the time. Do you want to work on this with Mike? I said, sure, yeah, I'll work on it. And in 1 week, we cut the black and white feature film. It was in the film festival, and Trailer Park got picked up for a television series, and that's where my career just went right off from there, just editing Trailer Park Boys and other things. So, but I've done quite a few different projects and things. I did some commercials back in the day. I did some visual effects, like painting out leaves that were falling in a milk commercial. Things like that in After Effects. And I've done Black Cop, which was the first drama, like serious film. All the other stuff has been comedy. So
Great. Mason.
Yes, hello.
Do you have questions for Jeremy?
Yeah, I do have a few. Very basic questions, but one of them is what's a common mistake that you made often when you were like less experienced and that you wish you could know now to like work on before?
Some mistakes that I made would have been speaking before I was spoken to in the middle of a session with a lot of big clients. And just, going, yeah, I like that. It looks great. And they'd be like, who are you and why are you talking? But the world's changed, that people don't really shun other people's input as much anymore. So I think that wouldn't be really considered that big a mistake anymore. I can safely say I never lost any footage. But I do know people that had lost footage, and that is a huge mistake. Maybe not backing up your projects in a good manner so that if you ever do want to go back and like make a reel, or 10, 20 years later you want to do a new version of the same film and re-release it or something like that, not having that ability would be considered a mistake, I'd say. Plan for potential future down the road where you might want that stuff. And I kind of wish that I was better at remembering people's names and faces and schmoozing and stuff. As you can see, I got a shirt that says too peoply outside. That is actually how I feel most of the time. I consider myself kind of a gremlin. Don't feed me after midnight or get me wet, and I live in the dark. So,
good way to be. Okay, I have another question. So, are you ever involved like during production, like prior to post, like with the set, and how do you like set up for when you go into post? So like the whole process of post itself.
Well, it differs on the project. So there's been times where I've just been brought in after all the stuff's been shot and they've had someone else edit, or they've had someone just like enter all the content into the system, and then they're like, please make something of this or help us finish this out. There's also been times where I've been right on set and editing as the footage is coming in. We start processing it and just going around, just cutting it while they're shooting. Then there's been a few times where I'm involved in the script. Early on, someone showed me the script, said, hey, do you have any ideas? Do you think, this scene's actually needed, or we should even bother shooting this? Or do you have maybe an idea that we can make it cheaper or cut around it, or things of that nature? That doesn't happen too often, but at our level. But bigger films, sometimes the director and editor are like hired near the same time, and they got a really good collaboration, and so it's different projects, different circumstance.
Okay.
I think, Mason, if I can jump in there, I know that when we're in pre-production, so like I mentioned, Jeremy and I have worked on a lot of seasons of Trailer Park and some of the specials. I know when I'm reading the scripts for the first time around, I'm making notes in regards to many things, and oftentimes it's things to do with post-production or a visual effect, or how are we going to do that. So the good thing is Jeremy's company, DigiBoys, is located right in the SwearNet studios, and he's really close by, or I can text Jeremy and ask, so a lot of things come up in the pre-production that you have to kind of consult with the editor on. I remember when we had that big hockey rink scene, Jeremy, where there was a huge level of visual effects that went in the end, and and Jeremy is really good and knowledgeable in sort of helping problem solve, like how are we going to shoot that so that his job and his side of things can work. And
in conjunction in that regard was we also had a visual effects supervisor that was flown in and stuff. That happens a lot. You bring someone out there who knows the final stages of the process to say, hey, this is going to be really tough. And then the DOP, like Adam would say, we're concerned about this, like what kind of exposures are okay, what kind of lenses should we use or stay away from, and camera tests and all sorts of stuff. And because I have a little bit more knowledge on the technical side, not just editing, but the bit rates and the color timings of shots and stuff like that, we can talk about it and work it out before we actually shoot it.
Okay. And then how long does it normally take to like edit an episode of Trailer Park Boys or Mr. D or
Well, again, that just depends on how many notes you get back, and different pieces of the puzzle have to be spelled out differently. Like in the case of Mr. D, there's the director, the producers, there's the broadcaster. They all get their notes. In this case of Trailer Park, since we've been on Netflix in the past, we only have the notes from the three actors, which are the producers of the show, and then maybe the director has some input, but most of the time the directors shoot and they walk away because they're on the next project and stuff, and it's really the three boys and myself that are doing the notes until they're happy with it, and then it's done. So it could be different. It could be one of those things where I worked on one show where the director was really involved at the beginning, but then when it came to editing, it was just hands free. They trusted me and what I presented. They were like, yeah, that's good. Maybe one tweak here, no notes, and we're done. But Trailer Park, we generally at the end of wrapping, if we're shooting like 28 days and there's 10 episodes, I think we had assemblies of all the episodes the first pass, maybe a week or two after shooting. So it's taken maybe a month and a half to get 10 episodes, and that's with 2 editors. But I worked on another show just recently that was a half hour, and that took me maybe a week per episode to get them to an assembly stage to present to everyone for the first round of notes. So,
We had certainly,
Yeah,
we had certainly streamlined the process with Trailer Park. That's for sure. I remember in the early seasons, Jeremy, when we would shoot to tape and we would do the backup through the clamshell, and then it was less. It was completely different. I mean. It wasn't as scripted, or it was still scripted, but there was a lot more improv, and so that became a bit of a tough thing in the edit suite because you're trying to read the director's mind, and that was when Mike Clattenburg directed everything, and I remember it was a harder battle back then. I guess just a tougher wrestling match in the edit suite. Would you agree, Jeremy?
Oh, definitely, because back then there was a script and they had an outline of how they're going to do the scene, and but at the end of the day, it was like, what's funnier? So there would be outtakes or other bits and pieces of one take that you try to merge with another take, and you'd be just like trying to work that out, and then some things would come out of just pure creativity, where you'd have two interviews being intercut between each other and going back and forth. That was never scripted that way. And lots of the times with Trailer Park, we'd shoot interviews just to cover the fact that it might take longer to play out a scene than we want. So we want to trim it down by having an interview to like make it more concise. And we were loading tape, so that was more than a real-time process. You shoot a 60-minute tape, you're taking at least an hour and a half to load all that content into the computer system before you can even really edit it. So as it was loading, we'd be watching it to kind of make mental notes of what was a good take or bad take or what we liked, so that we could try to cut down some of that time. But it was really time-consuming before full digital stuff.
We've just got a few questions in the chat here. Mason and Jeremy. Evan asks, what types of jobs can an editor pursue? Maybe if you can talk about that and just all the jobs that exist in the world of post-production.
Well, there's so many jobs. So if you're just going to be manipulating the footage, like editing, you could get into commercial work, documentaries, infomercials. Like Adam and I worked on a corporate video once back in the day. So there's like all sorts of little things like that. You could do YouTube things. That wasn't really an option when I was getting started. So you could, shoot your own stuff and cut your own things. And the bigger things you could get into maybe you're really good at scheduling. You could be a post-production supervisor where you're scheduling and budgeting for all the stages of post-production, and you're supervising maybe ADR sessions and things like that. And I've dabbled in almost all of those things to some degree, so there's a lot of different things. The first thing I would recommend is trying to start off as an assistant editor, or even just volunteering at a post house and say, hey, can I like hang out here, learn some stuff, load footage for you guys, or label things for you, and get into that. My first assistant editing job, I was relabeling all the archives for a company off their tapes and putting it into a spreadsheet and stuff just so they could search for things quicker. So, you got to start somewhere.
We've got another question here. Asks, what did you do post high school? So you had talked about that a bit, but talk about you were finishing up high school, and what college did you go through, and then how you ended up.
Okay. I got, so the entrepreneurship course got me into radio. I heard about the school, NSCC, Nova Scotia Community College out here in Nova Scotia. They had a program called radio, television, broadcasting, and you also did a little bit of journalism and news stuff. So I applied to get into that program, and I was lucky enough to get in, and that was 2-year program. My first year I was mostly in radio classes and stuff, but really enjoyed the television aspect of it, where we learned everything from live production to field reporting and shooting, cutting, delivery, and we even did a live broadcast, and that second year I just went full television. I said, no more radio, I'm just going to do the television side of it, and that's how I got my job.
I got another question here. I'm going to bring it back to Mason. Mason, there's a question from Adol. What's the biggest way your short film changed between writing, shooting, and the final edit?
Writing, shooting. For sure in the writing aspect, there's a lot more ambitious, a lot more going on. But then when we got to actually shooting, there's like a lot of restrictions. Like we can't go on top of a building, because we wanted to shoot on top of a building. There's one scene where we're in a parking lot, and and a lot of scenes that we took out just because it didn't look the way that I imagined it. There was a lot that just we couldn't do just because we didn't have the budget, and just a lot of stuff like that.
Another question from Idal. Jeremy, do you have any favorite type of projects to work on? And I had this written down as well. That's a great question. I know you've worked on animation, you've worked on documentaries, you've worked on features, and you've worked on series. So where does what's your favorite? Or talk about the challenges in each.
Well, yeah. So doc, you don't know where the story's going sometimes, so you're trying to build that story. But again, sometimes cutting comedy, I don't know where the direction and the scene is going to go, or how funny and where we're going to punch up the jokes. So personally, right now, I'm cutting mostly comedies, but I've done doc series. I've done like a sort of reality-based show and commercials and stuff. I'm not really drawn to doing commercial or corporate work these days, because the deadlines are a little bit ridiculous, and the creativity, like for the editing side, I don't get to like mess around with the footage as much. But cutting Black Cop with Corey Bowles was a great experience, because it was the first serious feature, and so I started analyzing like subtle movements of the head, the reactions and stuff, a little bit more than trying to get beats for joke. And I gotta say, I'd like to do that again, some serious stuff now and then, just to keep changing it up, keep myself busy. But I watch a lot of comedy, and I cut comedy, and I love laughing, and that makes my job less of a job. Just it's more enjoyable for me.
Great. Maybe if you could talk about that, the relationship between a director and an editor. You touched on it a bit, but I know that it's different with every project. Some directors are very hands-on and attached to the edit. Sometimes it's the editor's job, and it's kind of more of a producer or a showrunner to give the feedback. What are some of the experiences you've had?
Well, I've had one director who insisted on hitting me in the arm every time he wanted me to make an edit. That was not fun. I've had some directors where they have like super detailed, they break down their script at what camera angle at this point, and everything's super detailed, and they want it just like that. And then they see it and they go, oh, something's missing. And then I've had other directors who've been like, you know, I've shot it, I'm burnt out, just do some stuff with it, and then we'll come back at it together in a week or two and work from there and build it together. In the case of Black Cop with Corey Bowles, I was cutting everything myself, and at some point there'd be scenes where I was just like, I'm not getting what you really want from this, or I think maybe you know what you want more, Corey. So he got a copy of all the footage, and then he'd cut a scene and send it back to me, and I'd be like, oh yeah, what if we did this too? So it was really collaborative in that regard. In your case, Mason, you said you're a friend and you loaded up Premiere. Did you guys work together cutting it? Were you the one operating the keyboard, or was he operating the keyboard? And you know, and you guys both pulling out your hair? As you can see, I'm bald.
Yeah, so it was his computer, because I didn't have mine myself at the time, so I had to edit it in his basement. And yeah, it was just us, you know, in front of the computer, going on YouTube, watching a billion YouTube tutorials on how to do every little thing, and just, yeah, going crazy, being very stressed, like you said. And yeah, it was just, I had an idea of what I wanted it to look like, and we got the best that we thought we could do. I'm sure now that we know how to work, our next project will definitely look a little better, be smoother with the transitions. And yeah, it was just the two of us sitting in the basement trying to get it done. It took a very long time.
So it was a team effort. And
it was most definitely a team effort.
Yeah, I feel the best projects are it's really a team effort between like the editor, director, and maybe the writer. And I've been dealing with some producers that like love to sit in the edit suite, like Mike Volpe, the producer on Mr. D. He loves sitting in the edit suite with the editors and working on the scenes and coming up with ideas and stuff, because it really, that's when a lot of people feel like their baby's coming to be birthed. You know, you're really seeing the vision, you're really working out whatever kinks, and then from there it's done, right? You color correct it, you master it with your credits and everything, you output the file nowadays instead of putting it to tape, and you just walk away. hope that people enjoy it and watch it. So that's
interesting, talking about software. And so you cut yours, Mason, on Premiere?
Yes.
So, Jeremy, there are so many different versions of software for cutting, everything from iMovie to Avid. Does it matter? Can you give some advice to any of the audience watching about what they should be learning? It's like driving a car, I guess. You can drive a Cadillac, or you can drive a small smart car. Is there a difference, and what advice would you give for learning the technology?
Well, okay, it's like the old adage, you know, the tool is irrelevant, it's the master of the tool. So, but for me, I use Final Cut Pro, and I've used that forever. We have Avid, we have Adobe Premiere. We loaded up Sony Vegas at one point. I started off on a system called Media 100, which I think is still around, but it's quite different than it was when I was using it. And then now DaVinci is available. DaVinci you can get for free. So you can get the whole DaVinci suite for free, run it on Linux, Windows, and Mac. And it's powerful, but it's not the same. Like, the keyboard shortcuts might be a little different. Some of the terminology might be a little different from the other suites. And it may not be for everyone, right? For me, Final Cut Pro is amazingly fast. I can do a lot in it, and I'm comfortable, and it's not a hurdle. For a lot of other people, they insist on using Avid only because it has a feature called script sync, where it will sync up the script to your content, and then you can do like searches for specific words, and it will help, you know, some editors just go through massive amounts of footage really quickly that way. And other people love Adobe Premiere because they like to like dabble in After Effects and Photoshop and bring things back and forth. I find that each one of them has a pro and a con, and they're kind of locked down systems to some degree. You can't really play nice with an Avid project going into color correct with some other ones sometimes, and vice versa with DaVinci. If you want to do something else outside of DaVinci, it might be a little bit cumbersome in Final Cut, you know, and it's just whatever you're familiar with or comfortable with or can get your hands on, you know. If you don't have money, maybe you go DaVinci. If you have a few bucks or a school can help you out with Adobe Premiere or Final Cut, you know. And Avid back in the day was $10,000-$15,000. I think they're down to a more reasonable price. I think it's $40 a month to rent it. I'm not sure because I don't look at that all the time.
That's great. Got another question here. Asks, and this is a great question, and sometimes we use short form, which gets confusing. What is a post house? Can you clarify some of the terms? And Jeremy, when answering this, if you can talk about your company, which is a post-production house, DigiBoys, and what services you offer, and talk about your staff.
Oh, do I really want to talk about my staff?
You have a great staff.
I do, some of them. A post-production facility, basically our role is to help out with all the footage that comes from a shoot. But our company is gotten into even being on set for data management and stuff. So when they shoot on their cards and the camera cards are done, they go to the DMT, the data management technician, or the DIT, digital imaging technician, and they load the footage, put it onto drives, check to make sure that, you know, there's nothing crazy, dead pixels or corrupted data or anything like that, make redundant copies, and send it to the post house, which would be my shop. And then we are also a lab for other shows. Like we did The Sinner season 4. We were processing all their footage as they shot it and wrapping it for their editorial team, which was in LA, I believe, all their editors, and feeding all those files through the pipeline down to their edit suites down there where their assistant editors would take it. And post facilities in general, we take all the footage from the beginning and right up to the end when you deliver the final master. Some post facilities will actually do a quality control check where they're looking to make sure that there's nothing digitally wrong with the master file, or weird framing, or lip syncs off, or anything like that, or the sound mix is weird. And that's one of the other services that we offer too. So we do color correcting, visual effects, or we'll facilitate visual effects. We'll have the master footage. We'll rewrap that for the visual effects team and send those files off to them, receive their final works, and bring them back into the edit suite and put them on the timeline. So basically, a post house is your best friend. If you can work with a post house, you should try to work with a post house. In your case, Mason, I assume after you finished your final cut, did you output it yourself, or did you hand it off to someone else who took your project and then finished it a little bit?
We outputted it ourselves, and then
right.
Got told to make it a little shorter, and yeah.
Yeah. So in the past, I've had some people come to us and ask us to take their project that they've got all finished, and then we rewrap it, or just make sure that it's going to be the highest resolution that it can be, and give it out to all the different copies like Blu-ray, DVD, or H.264, whatever you want, and stuff like that. So that's what some post houses offer. I've also had a person come walk off the street, ask me if I could edit their wrestling tapes on VHS, if I could cut out all the commercials. And I told them that would not be cost effective for you, sir. We would charge you way too much to go through all those episodes of WWE.
There's another question in the chat for Mason from AFM. Did you have any challenges with where you planned to shoot your film? And also a question about any challenges with your props.
So with the props, the angel wings that we used was actually my mom's friend's angel wings that they like made. So a lot of the feathers were falling off, and then I'd come home and bring the angel wings home and get yelled at by my mom because I was breaking the angel wings. And then with the locations, a lot of it was just us, like majority of it was planned, but we'd also walk around downtown and be like, oh, this is a cool spot, and then we'd figure out how we could shoot it. But yeah, like the intro shot where he's walking across the street, that was just us saying this would look cool in this location. So we just adapted to what we had and just, yeah, figured out what looked cool, what didn't, and just made changes to it. And so, yeah, there wasn't too much struggle. It was mainly just us figuring out how we can change it.
Oh, to be able to be young again and just shoot wherever you want. At some point later on in your career, you're going to get like bogged down by location supervisors and tech scouts and all sorts of stuff like that, which can be really powerful. Leaning on a locations manager would have saved you a lot of time. You know, they could scout out the city, or you could just say, hey, we want this park shot, and he'd be like, yeah, here's 4 options and stuff like that. You know, that comes with some time. You'll get there.
Another issue that we did face, though, is we were shooting in an alleyway, and a random guy came up to us and started yelling at us, and we kind of had to run away. But that wasn't.
Then there again, locations manager or security would have helped.
Yeah. So we just kind of went away and then came back later and shot it, and just hoped he didn't come back.
What did you shoot on your film on? I'm curious.
Yeah, so I shot on a Panasonic Lumix G7 DSLR camera, and I just used the lens that it came with. I think it was a 15 to 45 millimeter lens. And yeah, I recently just bought a new lens because I'm working on something else, and I'm starting to learn more about cameras and all that. And yeah, so just keep adapting and changing and progressing.
Nice.
While we're on that topic, I'm going to jump back to Jeremy in a minute with giving you some tips to future post-production interested students. But tell us about your new project, and tell us the things you learned from making Angels and what you're going to carry into your new film.
Yeah, so right now I'm actually shooting a commercial for my dad's friend. He's starting up a new company, so I bought a lens for that just to make it look more professional. Since it's other people's work that I'm trying to get done, I'm putting a lot more into it and just trying to not make it look like I don't know what I'm doing. I bought lighting equipment. I'm focusing on that. Focusing on sound more. We're actually using a microphone boom that we bought, and so yeah, there's a lot. Trying to become more professional and focus on the different aspects other than just writing and shooting. And then for my new film, I'm working on 2 right now. The one I'm working for is for this portfolio project, because I'm trying to go to Ryerson next year, and they need a portfolio, a short film, 90-second short film on the term shifting perspectives. So that's I've written it, and I'm just getting my friends, and we're figuring out the scheduling, and yeah. And then the short film that I'm actually working on for myself is about these 2 guys, and their job is to go into people's homes and clean them and move around stuff in the house. And in each house there's different people, and they're just going to learn about their stories, and it's just all the stories are eventually going to come together, and there's an underlining little horror aspect to it. But yeah.
How long is that one going to be? Is that another short?
It's going to be a short, but it's definitely going to be longer than Angel in the Alleyway. I'm aiming for around 12 to 15 minutes.
Nice.
But, yeah.
Great. Jeremy, do you have any tips for students who are, interested in going into the post production side of filmmaking?
Yeah. Well, if you're in a program like if your school has a program for filmmaking or whatever, or if you're going into a post-secondary program, start reaching out to post facilities before your work terms if you have them, like well before. Don't leave it to the last minute, because you could be on their radar before everyone else, and then if they only take 2 or 3 interns or whatever, then you're in the door. In my company's case, we only take on 1 to 2 interns a year, and then everyone else we turn away. But you want to get in there as soon as you can. Even like I said before, maybe if it's volunteering on weekends or evenings or whatever, there's usually in a post house, there's some guy who's trapped at night loading tapes or backing up footage or something like that. Get your foot in the door. That's the main thing. That's true without just being in post-production. Get your foot in the door. And once you get in there, learn as much as you can. Be respectfully ask questions of people like, why do you do this? What's this labeling for? What software do you guys use? Can I use equipment in off hours to learn it myself? That kind of stuff. And like Mason was saying, like YouTube, watching tutorials and things, I still do that. Back in my day, we didn't have YouTube when I started out. But you got to rely on sources out there. There's so many free sources of learning things. Watch how to key stuff, how to load footage in, how to color correct, what a LUT is. You find a good few channels on YouTube and just watch the heck out of all the stuff they offer, and you'll get really up to speed really quick on how to do a better job in your own stuff. Yeah.
I remember, Jeremy, when you and I first met and I was working on that project with you, that's when I realized I wasn't really a post-production person.
Nerd?
Well, I just, dark rooms and at a computer, I liked the electric, the energy of being on set, and it's quite different. But whenever I work on a project, finding the right fit of an editor is so key. There's a reason why there are editors. They're like co-directors, they're co-writers. And especially when you're doing a documentary. Because like you said earlier, Jeremy, you write your documentary in the edit suite, like it comes together in the edit suite. Where with narrative, you're following the notes of what was shot and what frame size and what camera movement, and then you've only got so many options.
Yeah, like some of the stuff like Adam's done in the past, you don't know where the film's going to go in documentary and stuff like that. It's really tough, but an editor can bring a different perspective. And sometimes, even asking your assistant editor, on Corey's film, I gave my assistant editors some scenes to see what they would think and what they could cut and come up with. It also gives them a good opportunity to get their hands on stuff and, get more practice and stuff. And with people owning cameras nowadays, iPhones, you could shoot a feature film on. You could sit at home, shoot your own stuff, cut it in iMovie, like Adam said, although I don't know why you'd want to subject yourself to just that program when there's DaVinci or something else. But, you could cut your own films and get there and get more hands-on, and then use that to get yourself in with a post house or partnered up with a director. And if you want to get into post, you don't necessarily need to be in a film school or anything like that. You could just partner up with someone who's a creative director, writer type like Mason, and you want to be his tech guru sitting in a dark room all the time solving his technical problems while he's out solving the writing and directing problems, and that works good too.
And this leads us to the question that just came up in the chat from AFM. Is film school necessary? And I'm going to answer part of that first, and then I'll put it to you, Jeremy. You just said that it may not be necessary. Film school teaches you, so there's many different ways you can enter the film industry. You can just hang around a film set and hand out and meet people and get on as a production assistant possibly, or your aunt or your uncle work in the industry, and you just immerse yourself into, like an assistant on set. But what you're missing is you're not getting a full understanding of the industry, the people and the process and the business. And also what film school allows you to do is to make films, to fail, to succeed, to have a proper crew, to have proper gear and equipment and support and mentoring. And that's where I would say film school is absolutely necessary. Because when I moved out to Halifax and started to work on set, I would come across people who are, working as a grip, and they never went to film school. And sometimes there are some people who 20 years later are still in the industry, but oftentimes the people who sort of fall into a job on a film set, they last for a few years and then they move on to something else. I went to film school because I wanted to know the process and the people in the industry and who's making what and where's the money, because when you leave film school, guess what? You don't have the resources anymore. And now you have to apply for funding and to make films, and how do you pitch things to Netflix or to CBC or CTV? So it gives you that bigger perspective. When it comes to post-production, Jeremy, how would you answer that?
Oh, well, I think going to film school, you get so many more like-minded people in a tight space. You start working as teams and stuff. You don't get that if you're just trying to do it on your own and trying to get on a set. Like if you are walking on a set as a PA, you're not going to have someone turn to you and say, hey, we're shooting a film, you want to edit it tomorrow? But you'll have that at film school. If you excel in one special area, you'll have the other classmates come to you and go, hey, can you shoot this for us? Because you got a great sense of framing and stuff. You'll have someone say, hey, can you be our director? Can you be our actor? That collaborative spirit is better too, because everyone's the same age, roughly like-minded, all same drive, even though they might have different specialties. And that because I got into that group, I'm still actually working with people from my community college back in the day. Like one of them's shooting stuff for Trailer Park and editing with us too. So, those are lifelong connections that you can make outside of high school that you just wouldn't have had if you just walked on a set necessarily.
It is. I couldn't have said that any better. So I'm in my 13th year teaching at Fanshawe, and every year this collective graduates and they stay connected, whether they go to Vancouver or Toronto or Montreal. And it's this, within a few weeks of a semester, you see these groups, and then over the course of a year, the group, gets stronger and stronger. And now they're making short films on weekends, and it's also this network that you start to build that without going to a formal training in a college, you don't get that. You're going to meet people who you'll be making films with for the rest of your career, and networking through. And we've got students, be like, oh, we need somebody for the next few days, and this is how it's all that networking.
Yeah, networking is really important. I get all my gigs because of people I've worked with in the past and word of mouth. I don't have an agent. I don't go out there and advertise myself, although, maybe I should. Maybe I get more work. Maybe I get bigger projects. Maybe I get more varied projects. But at the same time, I'm blessed because I've got those connections early on and they paid off, but it's taken about 20 years, right? So.
Yeah. Evan asks, what motivates you when editing?
Death metal. I don't know. That's motivates me to edit or helps me through a rough edit. If it's a rough performance, a rough actor, and they're excruciating, and I had one project just less than a month ago, very low budget. God bless this person. She tried her best. She was over her head, but she pushed on through, and that was a painful edit. painful edit. But I would cut for about 45 minutes, try to rework the scene, walk away, and then take a breather, come back at it, work a little bit more, just take chunks at it. Don't let yourself get overwhelmed, because there's projects that have hundreds of thousands of hours of footage. You could get overwhelmed pretty quickly, but just think about baby steps. I need this shot. Okay, now I need to find that angle, or I need a better take on this performance, and just take step by step. And that's what helps me get through. And motivation is just, I want to make a good product and have people happy, funny, laughing.
We've only got, thanks so much, Jeremy. We've only got a couple minutes left before we wrap up, but there's a term that even if you just Googled it and to look up memes, fix it in post. I'm going to pose that to you, Jeremy, as kind of a closing sentiment. Is it smart to fix it in post or do it properly in production? And no, Mason, I'm going to give this to Mason first, and then Jeremy, you wrap it up.
I'd say fix it in production because there's definitely a lot of things that when we got to post, we were like, this doesn't work, this doesn't make any sense, and then there's no way that we could fix it there. So I'd probably say production. I'm sure Jeremy's more of an expert on that, but yeah, probably production, not fix it in post.
I'll leave you with this analogy. Okay, you have to put a shoe on and you have a sock with a hole in it. Are you going to address that hole and leave that sock on? Are you going to put the sock on after you put the shoe on? No, you're going to get a new sock, make sure it's fixed and clean and nice or whatever you need to. Then you'll put your shoe on. Because if you fix it later, it's going to cost you more time. It's going to be a bigger pain in the butt. And if you can't fix it well, then your product is going to look like you couldn't fix it well, even in post. Because money is usually gone by the time you get to post. Spend it at the front end if you can.
That is a great analogy. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Mason, it was really great to connect you with your film and to hear your perspective and through production and post. And Jeremy, thanks for sharing all your knowledge and your wisdom. And hopefully we're working together on something soon. Thanks
for having me.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, everybody. Don't forget to submit your film to the Forest City Youth Film Festival. It opens in January, and you'll see something at the end of this. Thank you for tuning in. Bye now.